Good afternoon. Today's meeting of the Environmental Advisory Board is called to order on January 20th. Welcome, everyone. The members of the Environmental Advisory Board were appointed by the City Council. We serve voluntarily. The board's objective is to provide citizen insight to the City Council and staff on environmental activities within and affecting the City of Clearwater. Agendas of today's meetings are on the wall at the entrance to the chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones and electronic devices to ensure a complete record of the board's actions. We ask each individual speaking to state their name and spell it for the clerk. Will members of the board and staff please introduce themselves? I guess we'll start with
Sarah Kessler, Staff Liaison.
Glenna Wentworth, board member.
John Thomas, Vice Chair of the Board.
Mark Wright.
And I'm Jared Leon, our chair. All right, our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting. Board members, are there any changes or corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Is there anyone to speak to an item that is not on the agenda? Please come forward. You have 3 minutes to speak on a subject that's not on today's agenda. There's no dialogue between people speaking and the board members until you've completed your comments. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. My name is Brian Beckman in Clearwater, Bryanbeckman. And I just wanted to highlight, I sent out an email to the board members earlier today. Periodically, I go and review what is available there as public record to the different permits that are given and extract out of that all the different installations of solar and estimate the number of kilowatts and the CO2 that would be saved as well as dollars to be saved. So I just finished doing that for the year 2020. Wanted to highlight the growth that you continue to see there. Also, I wanted to highlight what other cities are doing, not from a resident perspective, but what they're doing for installing solar on their own city buildings. Some using money from different funds that are available to them, maybe grants in some cases as well. I highlighted that a little bit. Even St. Pete is a partnership, I believe, with Duke for their peer solar. With Sierra Club and other groups continuing to advocate for the city to take advantage of the same opportunity. There have been and still continue to be existing opportunities. That doesn't need to be only with with new construction. As you can expect with residents, many of those solar installations are not new homes, they are existing homes that get solar put on them to get those savings. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight is there is a new solar co-op that is either been or being formed that will be available to, I believe it's to the whole county. That's been made aware to the city of Clearwater. I'm not sure the level of participation the city will have on that. I'm not clear yet, but certainly residents here in Clearwater can take advantage of that as well. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, I appreciate your persistence on solar and coming to speak on that. I believe Sheridan is going to join us later and give us an update on some of the processes or some of the updates with Greenprint, so that may include some aspect of solar as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else to speak on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to our new business. New business, Imagine Clearwater presentation from Catherine Corcoran. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Am I loaded?
Yeah, it's just minimized.
Oh, I see. All right, I'm Catherine Corcoran. You can call me Kat. I'm Senior Landscape Architect for the Engineering Department. I'm also a certified arborist. My primary job with the City of Clearwater is doing construction project management, so I am on the team helping to drive Imagine Clearwater forward. I spoke to this board, well, not maybe this exact board, about Coachman Ridge Park. Was that maybe 2 years ago, Sarah, by now? And so today I'm here to give you an update about kind of where we're at in design and how sustainability is definitely a foremost part of the design process for us, and to give you an idea about what's already included to some extent today. Right now, this is what we've got today, right? This is just taken from Google Earth. It's an awful lot of relatively unused parking space, some open turf areas, a tennis court, and not much else. This is where we stand right now. This is just a schematic plan. Currently, the entire design set is approaching, I think, 650 pages. So I'll accept your nods as thanks for not bringing that with me today. As you can see, we've got the much talked about band shell and seating area over there just behind the library, which will be right here beside us eventually. An open green lawn space, a lot of new landscape plantings. This will support a huge array of different sizes of events and things like that. We've got a civic gateway down there where Cleveland Street meets Osceola, and that's kind of like the entryway into the park. It kind of serves as like a living room foyer, and it overlooks the green area out over the water. We've also got a playground space, and the IWF there you can see next to the lake. That stands for Interactive Water Feature, more commonly known as a splash pad for families and children. The lake there, I grew up next to Lake Michigan, so to me that's a pond, but we're calling it the lake. And that's a stormwater mitigation feature. And then you can see that we have parking areas down at the end of Cleveland Street, which will no longer circulate throughout the park. There will be some small amount of parking there, and then the majority of parking is on the south end to support existing marina use, because of course they need to park their cars while they load and unload their boats, and for park users. And then there's some on-street parking adjacent to all of these spaces on the public right-of-ways that you see. So we're at about 60%. We're kind of crossing over from what we call conceptual design into construction documents, which means that there's still a lot that's very much in flux. We did a budget analysis, which required what we call value engineering, VE, that's cost-saving measures. So a lot of the materials that we had originally chosen, those are being swapped out for more affordable options, but we're always thinking about sustainability while we do that. So as we get in here, what we're doing is based on the LEED 4.0 framework, which you can, they spell all of that out on their website. We are not pursuing LEED accreditation formally, but we are trying to meet it as closely as possible in every way that we can. And then items 2 through 6 on the list here, those are just kind of the broad categories of sustainability efforts that we're going to go through today and how they fit into the park. So as I said, we're using LEED 4.0 as a baseline, but we are not pursuing formal certification. There were already 2 LEED certified professionals on the design team that we employed with Stantec. They're based over in Tampa and Orlando. One of them is an architect, the other is a mechanical engineer. So they've been informing that along the way. We also have other landscape architects and certified arborists, all informing all of this as we go, and certainly a number of city staff who are very environmentally minded, including Sheridan, who's sitting behind me. She's been included in some of these conversations as well as we go forward. So the first category of LEED, well, like I said, we're not getting certified, but their categories of certification include location and transportation, increasing the accessibility of a site using more than just your personal vehicle. For some of these large events, the city is talking about whether we can set up some kind of a shuttle system, because we have a lot of parking available not only in downtown but throughout the rest of the city, large lots where if we have one of these huge events, it might make more sense to have people park. For example, something that's come up is the parking lot at the across from Spectrum, I think it's Joe DiMaggio facility. That's a very large parking lot there at the corner of Old Coachman and Drew Street, and so to shuttle them in and use the driveway at the end, or the circular drive at the end of Cleveland Street to serve as a drop-off area, and encourage those other modes of transportation. We are also connecting this park to the Pinellas bike facilities and their infrastructure. We planned a route through, to be specifically to support bike use. We will, of course, have bike racks and things like that available. And in changing from what's majority parking surface right now to a park, we inherently have a lot of sustainability benefits in just doing that on its own. One of them, in reducing the actual impervious area. We're reducing impervious area by 3 acres total and reducing parking area by 5 acres total. Okay, so we still have plenty of hardscape surface, but that's now for people, right, instead of vehicles. And so in doing that, not only do we reduce the impervious surface area, but that inherently reduces, stormwater runoff. It reduces contamination from vehicles. So like if you come and you're leaking some fluid, because we are accommodating fewer cars on site now, that inherently means that there's less contamination on site from those kinds of sources. For the sustainable sites category, this is of course a nice open space, right? And that comes with a lot of social and environmental benefits. This encourages people to come out and interact with one another socially, interact with their environment. This is a waterfront property and that's very attractive to people, right? So we're kind of reclaiming that instead of being a very beautiful space to park your car. This is now a beautiful space to spend time with your family and your neighbors. Okay, and for stormwater management, we are exceeding the minimum requirements. Right, so long into the future, we hope that this site can continue to function in terms of stormwater mitigation and rainwater seeping in on site without having to travel long into the future as things may change. We're reducing the heat island effect, right? So that's something that happens. Urban areas tend to be hotter because they have more paved surfaces. Because we're reducing the paved surface on site, we're also going to minimize the effect of the microclimate that comes out as a result, which can improve habitat for wildlife like birds and small mammals as well as people. This is Florida. We experience things when it gets very hot. I live in Safety Harbor, and when I go running at night, there are parts of town where I run through, and I can tell that those areas are less shaded by trees because even an hour after sunset, I can feel the heat radiating up off the pavement. So that's like a microclimate heat island effect that I experience personally. And on this site, with reducing hardscape by 3 acres, you can imagine that will have a dramatic effect on the localized temperature as experienced on the ground. Finished floor elevations. That's a fancy word for how high above sea level are the floors of the buildings that we're putting in on site, because we are adding quite a few built structures, right? Those will be at 12 feet above sea level. That's above the minimum required for flood management. Okay, so as things progress and if climate change comes to fruition in the way that we're expecting, these kinds of storm events will be less likely to impact the buildings that we're constructing because they will still be well out of that floodplain for years to come. So in a storm surge event, they're protected. This protects our investment, our actual dollars that we're putting in, and it also makes the site more resilient over time. As for materials and resources, this one, this is not the exciting stuff that everybody likes to talk about. It's much more fun to talk about solar energy sources. However, something we call continuous installation of buildings, that makes things much more efficient to climate control, which of course we do here in Florida all the time. And what that means is traditionally, if you have a wood frame building, you put a piece of insulation in between each stud, right? But that means that there's a gap in installation where that stud is, and there would even be a gap between the stud and the insulation itself. This is going to be a continuous surface of insulation, so those gaps don't exist, so it's much more efficient. It retains its cold or heat as you want much more efficiently than other methods of construction. And so then, of course, your monthly operating costs are reduced as a result because you're not consuming as much electricity to heat or cool the building. LED light fixtures wherever that's appropriate. We do have some uses, like for the band shell, there are certain stage lights that I'm not sure can be used LED right now, but any light on this site and in the buildings that can be LED will be LED. And we all know the benefits of that. They're very long lasting and they're very low in power consumption. As for indoor environmental quality, this is something that's often overlooked, but using what we call low-emitting materials. So you guys know like that new car smell or that new house smell. Like those things that you're smelling are chemicals that are a natural result of producing the things that we use to build different building materials. We are using materials that emit that as little as possible. Okay, so that's an indoor health and air quality benefit for the people who are going to be occupying these spaces. People can be more healthy and productive when they're not exposed to those over time. Thermal comfort, we're putting individual controls in these individual spaces. So if the person in one office prefers things to be very warm and the person in the next office prefers things to be very cool, we don't have to heat two spaces or cool two spaces. You know, they can control smaller areas and be more efficient that way. As for lighting, same thing. You know, maybe I need a light on my office, but this person doesn't on the other side of the band shell because they're not in there right now. They can turn that off. And that seems very elementary when you say it, but when you expand this to a collection of buildings, it's very important to be able to have the, you know, it's not all office spaces are on or all office spaces are off. And then we're also employing natural light whenever possible. It's a very sunny location. So anytime we can put the office spaces or human use spaces on a sunny facing part of the building, we're doing that so that maybe they don't need to use artificial light at all. And then quality views, you know, name a more beautiful place to stand in Clearwater aside from the beach itself, right? This is going to be a very wonderful place to be, not only for people working for the city or coming in for these different events, but for all of the people who are going to visit the park. This is very nourishing environment to be in, and so we're capitalizing on the views that we've got. I've got 3 slides here for natural capital assessment. This is a big one. Like I said, because we're going from a parking lot to a park space, there are a lot of natural benefits that we get. So the conversion of asphalt to, you know, it says grass areas, but I'm including, you know, landscaping and trees in that as well. We're improving soil quality. There's better erosion, better water infiltration. We're not having as much sediment moving around on the surface of the park. Biodiversity increase, carbon sequestration, you've got all these listed here. Certainly improved aesthetics. I mean, I don't know anybody who wouldn't rather look at a landscaped area than a parking surface. And then, of course, the increased recreational opportunities that we're programming into the park spaces. If you let me talk about the benefits of adding trees to a space, I will talk. You are smart to shake your head. I teach a class outside of my work time, and so I can literally talk about trees for 36 hours. I won't do that.
Meeting ends at 6.
Yeah. There are, you know, many, many benefits of planting trees, and I'm sure that you're familiar with a lot of them, so I won't use too much more time on it. But right now on site, I believe we have 424 trees and palms that showed up on the existing site survey. We're still in the process of deciding exactly how many are being protected and then exactly how many are going back in, but it's quite a few, both protected and going back in. And lastly, we have the expansion of public facilities. You know, waterfronts are not for parking vehicles, in my opinion. That's my professional opinion as well as my personal opinion. Waterfronts are for people, so we are reclaiming this space to benefit human beings, benefit the citizens and visitors of Clearwater. Increasing recreational opportunities, these things all lead to an improvement in the quality of life for anybody who can use these spaces, right? It's physical activity, you get reductions in stress and chronic diseases when you have more access to this space, right? And, you know, better green spaces correlate to lower crime. I'm certainly not guaranteeing any specific outcome as a result of this, but we know that in areas where you have these well-maintained park spaces designed for people to use, that you tend to see, you know, higher quality of life and lower crime rates. And we also can increase local revenues, which is a major driving goal of this project to begin with. And we want to support the downtown and the non-beach areas of Clearwater in ways that we haven't before. And of course, with all of that comes increased real estate values as a result. So again, this is where we're at with the design, and I'll take any questions you have. I have the full narrative that they gave me, and if there's anything I can't answer, I'll be happy to get back to you after I talk to the design team.
Thank you very much, Kat. Yeah, if you'd like to.
You talked about bicycle.
I'm sorry?
Bicycle facilities.
Bicycles.
You said there are going to be some trails. Are you connecting to the Pinellas Trail?
Yeah, so we call it the Helix, coming off of the Memorial Causeway. That's right now part of the Pinellas Trail, and it kind of ends at a really weird angle, right?
You have it on it?
And so from that point, does it show it? Not real well on this graph. But the waterfront corridor that you see like right there at the edge of the seawall is designed to be included in that framework.
Yeah, that trail, that does come down there. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
From that direction.
So
Not
the
very.
the bike route then is basically along the waterfront, is that?
Yeah, so like picture like a lowercase n. I believe that, what is that, Pierce Street? Yes. I wish I had like one central thing I could point, because you can't see anything when I do this. On the left side of the screen, that's Pierce Street, and so that, and then connecting to the waterfront, and then back up Drew Street are like designated to be part of the trail. And we've been working with, I think it's Forward Pinellas, their team that does like a lot with their bike system. They came in to talk to us about what our plan was. Well, it was before the pandemic, but they've also been involved.
So the trail would basically be extended on Drew Street itself, past the traffic light on Osceola?
Yeah.
So you can make
There are sidewalks on there too. I guess I don't know if we're designating one or the other,
Yep.
but I mean, when we've, conceptually drawn it out, it is represented as being like a big arc through the site.
Well, I take that route all the time, several days a week from the Helix, and I won't go up Drew Street because it's not as safe as making a left at the traffic light as you're coming up the hill
Yeah.
by the library and then going up the other side streets. Much safer route, which I'd probably still take to avoid Drew Street
You'll
and
have
crossing it
options.
again. So, just from a cyclist's perspective. I do like the design now. I know earlier design studies had a connecting roadway through the middle of the park, which just did not make sense to me. And I think this design that keeps the parking and the service drives at the periphery is excellent.
Yeah. Relocating the band shell motivated a lot of the design choices we were now able to make that we couldn't before.
Now, whereabouts is elevation 12 on the plan?
So any building that you see, so the band shell and we've got the Dockmasters building, nobody's ever asked me that in plan view before.
I would presume it in the green floods, it's going to be in the floodplain?
No, so we have a variety of elevations shown here. I would say like right now where the green lawn, like where that text is written in the middle of that big green space, I think that's going to be at about elevation 10. The buildings are slightly above that.
Well, I'm not concerned with the buildings. I guess where he was headed is the potential impacts from severe storms.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Plants and trees that are not adapted to assault.
Yeah, so we are raising the elevation of the site overall by a few feet, and the FEMA floodplain maps are in the middle of being, they were supposed to have been re-released in 19. We are still waiting, but we know that this area, we're now out of what is called the velocity zone. They've remapped everything, and with us raising the site, we're very well outside the floodplain. I mean, the water's edge, like that strip of land, like right at the seawall, will still be more vulnerable, just like it always will be. But the majority of the site is going to be much better protected than it is right now.
Just to answer some flood map questions. So hopefully our new flood maps are going to be released in February. I actually have a call about that next week. And then it'll be 6 months before they're officially adopted. So the flood maps in this particular area, the base flood elevation went down. And so they are actually designing to the old maps that have higher restrictions. And the new maps are going to be like less restrictive, but they're still designing to those higher restrictive levels. And like she said, there's no longer a velocity zone there. And so that will, additional protection from waves that come in. So we're in better shape.
Great.
Any other comments? or questions?
I have more of a, concern, comment. Every time I've ever biked that area, it's a large homeless population in this vicinity, probably due to some of the activities nearby. Have you guys given that any thought of how that's going to work? How this is? It's almost like you're making it more hospitable for that type of for people sleeping in the park, for things like that. What sort of mitigating ideas have you guys gone over, or any?
Sure. So I want to definitely state that I don't have the answer to homelessness.
Right, no, right.
This park won't solve it. However, as we've been going through the design process, anytime we choose site furniture, the city has standards that try to discourage things like sleeping on benches. Public parks are available for everybody who's behaving lawfully. We tend to notice that homeless populations don't tend to spend time in active spaces, right? They prefer quiet spaces. So the idea being that we are reactivating this park. So we would anticipate a reduction in that kind of activity because, if this playground and splash pad and this green invites people to come and use the site more, that's typically, we don't see as much homeless activity in those areas, but that's something that's been a conversation, and certainly, like the police team has been involved in what they can do when, but I guess am I addressing your question?
No, I
Something that
just
we're
nice
thinking
to
about.
hear that you guys have given
Yeah.
that some thought, because it's definitely an issue in the park, and you're probably right. It's probably because it's less active now, and you could potentially reduce it. And you're right, nobody has the answer to
And
the
there was,
population.
the initial draft of the landscape plan, you're seeing, this is a very high, like, you're seeing grass is light green and trees are dark green. That's all I'm showing you on this plan. But there's significantly more than that going on, right? And we did give the design team feedback, like, no, we know this will get too big. We don't want something over this height in this quantity because that will be a place where people can lie down or they can hide in there. Trash can accumulate, things like that. So those kinds of measures go into landscaping decisions, and I mentioned site furniture as well.
Yeah, and I was thinking that does the furniture accommodate somebody sleeping on it? Are the bathrooms going to be open all night? Are there any bathrooms?
So that's a great question. So we have the interactive water feature is regulated just like a swimming pool. So therefore it needs shower and restroom facilities within a certain distance of it. So we have those. They're attached to the dockmaster's building. You can kind of see, you can see where the bridge kind of like hovers over the site. It's like in the shadow, and then there's a round, like green space. It's just below that. So you see dockmaster's building and then IWF restrooms. So that's where those are located, and we're building those in such a way where they're behind a decorative gate, and park staff will open them in the morning and lock them at night.
Nice.
And same for like the event restrooms. You see where the library is on the lower right portion of the screen. If you go like close to Drew Street and just hop up to the edge of the big lawn space, that's a brand new restroom facility that's designed to support major events. We didn't want to keep bringing in 50 porta potties every time there's an event, right? We have a permanent structure, but again, that's going to be under lock and key unless there's an event going on.
With the new roof on the band shell, what are the plans for the ground underneath that? Are you going to attempt to grow grass there?
No, we will not. What exactly that's going to be, whether that's some kind of an astroturf or something else, we know that we're restricted by code that we can't use certain materials for that. But at this point in time, that's still under development.
At one point, was some discussion about some kind of commercial use between the library and the gateway. Is that still part of the longer-range plan, that parking associated to the library would go away or be accommodated in another way?
We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like.
Right.
We do know that having access to parking there is very important for the library patrons and the staff. The property line for the library, you can see the first green space. I want to say south. Do you guys know what I mean when I say left of
North,
the library's
south,
main
east, and
entrance?
west.
So you do understand north, like on this plan, so like,
Does the mouse
Work
work?
is that away?
Can you use the mouse?
can they see it?
There's actually a TV
Oh,
right in
good.
front of
Oh,
your
thank
podium.
God.
Yeah, we could see the cursor.
Thank you.
Reach
Hold on.
around and
Okay, so this is currently the main entrance to the library. The library's property lot line slices right about here, right? So as the city pursues developing the parcel to the south of that, this is not a great house. This parcel, it only wants to go two directions. That will change, that will certainly change. We have loosely discussed, is it possible that whoever develops that may, work collaboratively with the city and have, public parking available, maybe underground or on the first couple floors. We don't know what that's going to look like yet. It'll certainly look very different than it does, but until that actually happens and somebody moves forward with building, we're maintaining that as is. During construction, it'll be closed off and there'll be like a lay down area, except for like the actual library spaces. But until somebody is actually ready to break ground on that, we're not changing the layout.
I'm sure you'll have a voice in those landmark trees that are just to the
Yeah, they're being
the west.
preserved, don't worry.
Okay. We'll have faith in you for that part of the.
That's funny, my first question was about trees, and then she went into that, and I was like, scratch that off.
Landscape architects and certified arborists who trains other arborists, they're not cutting that one down.
What about native plants? I didn't,
Yeah, we're very much focused on using native plants. So like I said, the landscape plan specifically is still being developed. And I mentioned already, we've like, no, you can't use that. We want to use more of this. We've had bad luck with this one. How about this one instead? Or like show us where in the area this specific plant has worked for you in past projects, things like that. But we're very much focused on using Florida natives or naturalized species whenever possible. Certainly we're not going to use anything that we don't know for sure is not invasive, so
Right.
very, I don't want to say limited palette because I come from Wisconsin and that's a limited palette. But yeah, very much focused on sustainable planting choices.
Would there be an opportunity for like an arboretum or for educational signage around different enough different trees to?
Yeah, we haven't settled on exactly what kind of educational and wayfinding signage we're including. Right now on the park site, they have like some, well, they look kind of like this podium. They talk about like the marine life and things like that. We haven't gotten far enough for me to say definitely yes, we will have that. I know that that's a big component of Crest Lake Park, kind of just down the street from us, but I don't know to what extent we're going to do that here.
You mentioned this was the 60% design phase.
Yeah.
And John, you mentioned some changes that you noticed from previous iterations to now when we're seeing it. And I noticed as well, like the stormwater pond or the lake, I think that had changed because there were some ideas of having it as a tidal area or something like that.
Initially it was going to be directly connected to the water in like a tidal basin. That wasn't going to work.
Right.
It was not going to function and look nice the way that we wanted it to. And yeah, it's been massaged quite a few times.
So yeah, I was curious in terms of from the 30% to now here at 60%, some of those, like I think the road is a large change and that was another, are there some other bigger changes that have happened between those two processes? That's something that we were going to discuss or we've talked about before is when to talk about and when to have presentations. And
I don't mean to laugh. There have been so many changes. I mean, I'm on the team that makes the daily changes, right? So I'm in my head. I'm trying to filter out what you'd be interested in. Like,
I think like the band shell has moved.
The
So
band
that's
shell has
another
moved.
large one.
What else? The gateway, the Civic Gateway Plaza. So, cursor time.
But fairly substantial.
So there used to be a full building under here, and that wouldn't. That would have included, for Pete's sake. It would have included things like a first aid room, ticketing booth, cash box, the pump house there was going to be a water feature cascading down that main stairwell that leads into the park. And a couple of other mechanical support facilities there. And we no longer have any of that, because when the band shell moved, we lost the need to have all of that kind of thing right there. It had been there because as you go from the Civic Gateway, if the band shell was like immediately there, it made sense to have all that together. But then since we moved the band shell, That's why the restroom building is there by itself, where it used to be attached to the dockmaster's office up in the other corner of the park. So there was like a domino effect of move the band shell, which we all agree was a good decision. The entire design team and staff supported that. But as a result, yeah, we don't need those facilities in the Civic Gateway Plaza. We had to reduce the size of the dockmaster's building because there were charter restrictions that were brought to our attention a little later in the game. The lake is deeper. To reduce its square footage, I believe, is the decision that we made. And then, more value engineering decisions than I can count. We were going to do different colored pavements and, some pavers. Now it's all just broom finished concrete, which is like the standard concrete you see on the sidewalk. All of it is 6 inches thick, except where we have things like stairs and very thin passageways, and there are not many of those. And the reason that it's all 6 inches thick with reinforced fiber mesh is so that an emergency vehicle and maintenance vehicles can traverse anywhere that they can reasonably fit on site. And so that will also support things like food trucks and event vendors and things like that. And certainly with supporting events the size that we're imagining, we wanted to make sure that I don't care what way a frazzled ambulance driver comes in. If it's his first day in Clearwater, he's going to be able to drive safely anywhere that he can fit the vehicle. And so that's a change that, it doesn't really look like much on the plan, but it's very important in terms of the functionality of the site.
So to follow up on Jared's point, between the 30% stage and the 60% stage, a lot happened.
Well, and this is
And
actually
then
the second version of 60%, because we had reached 60% when council decided to move the band shell. So like, we're still at 60%, or we have reapproached 60%.
But from 60 now going forward, there really, it's design details,
Yes.
materials, further,
Yes.
compliance with a lot of the code requirements and
Yes.
generating the calculations and
Yes.
engineering reports that
Yeah,
support
we're getting
everything
into
that's
the
here.
nuts and bolts now.
Right.
I mean, today I had a conversation about how many ice machines should there be in the dockmaster's office. So we're getting into that level of detail at this point.
So I was curious as well, you'd mentioned you're not pursuing LEED certification, but you're getting close. What does that mean from, I guess, from a resident to say, like, to tell someone that lives here, say?
Sure. The
Is
best way I can describe
Is it a cost thing, and what are some things?
it's a cost and a maintenance issue. You do have to pay a certain fee to become LEED accredited, and then there's a monitoring process which comes with its own set of fees. And our opinion was, we are put in the stewardship position of spending city taxpayer dollars as wisely as possible, and the rose by any other name. Who cares if we have the certificate if we've done all the things?
So
right?
standards-wise, you would meet the standards, but not go through
Meet them
that
as
processing?
closely as
Okay.
possible, yeah.
Okay, and then, I was gonna ask about the use of fake turf, and that still is in the.
The only
kinda-
area that we're considering using it, and like I said, we haven't finalized any of this, would be under the canopy seating area. We
So it
talked-
would be covered, so it wouldn't have like a heat island effect?
Right, and the seats by charter cannot be permanent. They have to be able to be removed in between events. So instead of having an enormous concrete stance under there, which would not be nice looking or inviting or very environmentally friendly, we wanted that to be a more comfortable space. So like I said, we're still exploring exactly what that's going to be. But the material that comes up most often is some sort of artificial turf. But I can't make a promise about that, but that's where we're leaning right now.
Okay, and then the use of solar, was that considered for any of the buildings out there?
The solar conversation has been ongoing. Duke Energy has been involved in that. They are not quite as open to what they were for St. Petersburg. But there are certainly opportunities. They're talking to us about what would that initial investment look like. They have a number of different options. Is it something that they own and maintain, or if we put it on a city building, they prefer that we own it because they don't like to send their employees onto the roof of a city building, and then there's liability and damage insurance issues that go with that. So there's a number of options that are available. We have not yet committed to solar on the site, but it's been an ongoing conversation And I believe we have another update meeting with them coming up in the next few weeks.
Where are you considering solar? On the parking lot? Or like where, or the loft buildings, or, yeah?
So the favored options, which I want to be very clear, we have not committed to, are the kind that act as like a shade over a parking structure. Duke Energy, I think that's what they kind of have not been favoring as much. You can also put them on the roofs of some of these buildings. That's the ideal way to do it. They like what they call a solar tree. So that's like a post with a canopy of, a solar panel on top. They can make them look like flowers, and then, it acts as like a shade structure for people, and also they have models where you can plug your phone in if that's what you want to do. The big one that people keep bringing up is, why don't we just put it on the roof of the band shell? And that's certainly an option, but that requires a lot of very different design for the band shell cover itself, because you can't just retroactively go and stick it, right? You have to build the mounting hardware into the design from the beginning if you know you want that. And I am not a solar panel repairman, but I would, if I were, I would not want to be up there repairing solar panels when there are lower roof structures that would maybe be a little bit more accessible safely. But it's an opportunity, right? And certainly the band shell building itself, because that's like office space, stage support, that's much lower, but it still is a roof surface. And we've been talking to Duke, what do they think about how the causeway interacts with all of this, because that does create a lot of shade in the areas where it hits for a certain part of the day. So realistically, where can we put that in the site? So like I said, it's all ongoing. We haven't taken it off the table, and we haven't committed to anything yet. We're certainly learning a lot about what is available, and it's a very exciting industry, and a lot of opportunities are coming up.
You said there was a little bit of hesitation versus when Duke worked with the city of St. Petersburg. Was there a reason for that? Is there not enough space or not enough solar panel opportunity that we're talking about here, or there was more there, or is there?
There's a little more.
Okay.
I think that I believe the way that it works with St. Pete is that Duke Energy was allowed to put those parking shade structures in. Duke Energy owns those shade structures, and they lease the land space from the city of St. Pete. And then any solar generated is hooked up to the larger grid. It's not used on site for most of those shade panels. And so then the city of St. Pete receives a credit, a wholesale value credit, not like what you pay, at the end of a certain time cycle.
Okay.
And I believe that it maybe they had more optimism for how the math would work out at the end of that. Because we said hey, do it here too, and they were saying logistically there was more involved than that. So they haven't said no, we will not.
It seems like the most opportune area is the drop-off area that you have there, because it would also provide shade for people waiting, as well as, that whole area, that end of it being under some type of a canopy. But no, my designers have the idea guide. That's where I would put it, because you point out the shade issues, and there's really no other spaces that could be accommodated.
We talked about too, maybe there's a small shade canopy near the splash pad.
I'm looking at something that's of some substance. You've got an area there, I don't know what the scale is, but it's probably at least a quarter of an acre.
The scale, you can barely see the scale underneath the north arrow in the bottom right.
But it also serves another purpose. Many of the canopies, for drop-off areas, whether it's inclement weather or sun and people waiting for the shuttle to take them back, they're shaded.
Yep. So I will bring that feedback back with me.
Thank you.
Any more comments from the board? Questions? Any from the audience?
I think I've definitely used my 10 minutes.
All right. All right, hearing none, well, thank you very much,
Thank
Kat.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll move on to our next item. It's review Environmental Advisory Board powers and duties as defined by code.
Oh, no, this is your discussion.
Oh,
Like, this
okay.
is not me.
Oh, all right, I thought we had,
This is council discussion, like your board discussion.
okay, I thought you kicked this off, Sarah. All right, very well. Well, this is something that we've talked about in the past, and this is something that there was a bit of discussion about at our presentation in December to City Council. And we could see here that our powers and duties are fairly broad. The focus has been on environmental objectives. I think something that Kat mentioned a number of times throughout her presentation was sustainability and resiliency, and I think those are, I don't know if it's buzzwords or definable words that are separate from environmental, but you know, our business is to give city leaders an understanding of what is going on in environmental activities, and maybe we also need to include sustainability and resiliency activities as part of our definition and objective, and include that as part of you know, what our mission is, because just having environmental doesn't seem to have the overlap that I think we think it does within the city and how it works. So that's kind of where I think our discussion can kind of move forward with our powers and duties, is including some new language that would further define the environment and the environmental activities. So I'll open that up to further discussion to other members here. And
I don't have anything to add to that. I like the idea of adding sustainability to the language of our duties. Absolutely.
yeah, so I don't know if, you know, that also would, you know, in function, you would have to have a change in our bylaws, and it would change the name, or somehow include, you know, sustainability, or you know, have that in as well in, you know.
Well, what's here is quite general and broad.
It is.
And, you know, many would say that sustainability is a subset of environmental objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, whether you want to state that specifically, I think, you know, I would consider it covered just in the environmental objectives. And there is, you know, this gives us this board a lot of latitude
Mm-hmm.
for issues that he feels merit attention.
I agree as well. I think historically, because of the way our board was formed, we fall under the stormwater department, which isn't as inclusive a department as sustainability, or where, like you said, a more general and broad sense of what we do is the environment, which covers a larger aspect than just stormwater. And so because of how the board was initially begun many years ago, it had a different name then. It was the Stormwater Board at that time, and over time the name has changed as its mission and goals have you know, evolved. So I don't know if that's another watershed moment for us now at this point to consider making those changes as well, because like I said, I agree that environmental seems to be very broad, but at the same time we've been narrowed with that because of where we fall in, I guess, a departmental aspect, right? So that's why I think we've discussed this. And
So the narrowing is about where we fall, not how our powers and duties are written.
right. But I don't know how, outside of changing our bylaws, which would then have, it would force a council discussion on how that would, where we would fall then
I see.
in terms of departmentally, right? Yeah, so,
So that would be, that would necessitate it, because, I mean, I was surprised to see how general this was. And yet hearing that we have some limitations, I didn't understand where the limitations were coming from.
yeah, I think it's partially because of how, like I said, over time, our board looked at more, and specifically stormwater issues, and that has changed. It changed many years ago.
Right.
But we still were always in the same department, and that's why we always have our stormwater presentation every year, which again, it does have environmental issues, and it meets what our bylaws are. But like I said, like maybe now that we have other departments that maybe more aptly fit what our role is supposed to do and how it overlaps different departments that we've seen and different things that we've discussed. If we're only in one department, we don't have overlap in that sense to look at something that a Parks Department may say that doesn't have anything to do with the Environmental Advisory Board, even though from our duties and focus
So we need
should
to
be.
focus
So-
our duties more, because that'll actually focus our duties more to put, to start putting, I guess, it could be seen as more restrictions. The sustainability and resiliency, those are broad. And
So
then
issues of the environment, including sustainability and resiliency. I'm trying to think of ways that we can maintain our
Yeah.
broadness, but also, I guess, make sure that
Update us.
we're not being, that we're still going to be able to discuss issues of importance for our board that we might not be able to, or wouldn't, at the right time, versus getting the issues that past a time when we should be able to give input of, importance. So, yeah, that's kind of why we're here talking about this now, is to try to figure out how we can
Okay.
better represent the community and move those issues to, people, the city council. That's, what our duties are supposed to be. So, yeah. I don't know if we need a motion, or
The only
if we
other
still
word
need to
that I
discuss
thought of
more to
was
understand how
health.
to.
I don't know that health really belongs in there.
I didn't say health, I said sustainability and resiliency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, clean air.
Oh,
clean
environment,
water.
yeah, sorry, yeah. Issues of the environment, but,
Would the motion be, make us part of the Parks Department, or what?
no, I don't think it would include that. I think it would, for the council to discuss more, with our input in this discussion now, where they would see how our role is and how it could be. And so, I don't think it would, we aren't part of the Parks Department. We do have an Office of Sustainability now, right?
So that would, if we would fall under the Office of Sustainability, that would broaden our,
Right, because that oversees,
Well,
or that
So
looks at,
right now I'm in the engineering department.
right.
So, there would have to be changes, like there would have to be changes if that's something that the city manager and the council decides that it's a more appropriate place for you guys to be under that umbrella. Because currently, it's under the engineering department.
What department is Sharon in?
She's out of the city manager's office. So that's something also, so yeah, I'm in the engineering department, so I very much engineering view of things. Whereas in Sheridan's group, like that's much more comprehensive, looking at the whole city and whatever else. But I'm not pawning, like just stating a fact.
Right.
Just stating a fact.
Yeah.
So,
If-
something to consider. This is very broad, and perhaps that's one reason, we'll say one reason, that the council has trouble giving you guys directive to look at something and provide more information, maybe to provide more information or to provide something more specific in the powers and duties for them to give you tasks, because that is something that it is coming. Like, the next step of things is the council is the one who's going to set your agenda. So it's not going, like, they're going to say, this is something important to us. We'd like you to investigate, talk to your neighbors, figure out if this is something important to residents, and discuss here. So directive is going to be a little bit different moving forward. And so that's why we're discussing these things, is because direction should have been coming from council all along, and that was sort of like left by the wayside for a long time. And so they're kind of getting back to that. So what kind of direction do you want is kind of where this discussion is.
Hearing the discussion here, what I would suggest is just adding 3 words after the word environmental, and that's issues and sustainability. So it would read, identify and assess significant environmental issues and sustainability objectives.
I like that, yeah. And as far as how our group aligns, I think that was something that was mentioned as well. I don't know is that something that we make in a motion to change the bylaws and have council look at where our board, how do we move that aspect forward
So
as well?
I'm providing feedback to the council on what your discussion is, and they are the ones who will change if they deem it.
Okay, so we don't
so-
need any sort of action.
Yeah, just
Okay.
consensus among you about
Okay.
what you want me to report back,
Okay,
is all I need.
And I think to follow up then in the next line, the review and provide recommendations to the city commission on selected environmental and sustainability programs.
yeah, we could tell how old this is because we haven't had it called a commission for quite a few years, so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure who they were referring to there.
They changed the name to council a
All right,
while
so
ago.
that should be changed.
Yeah, I agree. I like both of those. I don't know if anyone else has any other.
No, like I was saying before, I
Yeah.
think adding sustainability is a key thing, especially now that we have a sustainability coordinator that we see on the regular.
Yeah,
It just makes
certainly,
sense.
certainly.
And it's certainly more comprehensive. I mean, I would support that if that's a motion.
Okay, so we don't need any sort of action or take any action then or make a
No,
motion.
if
We
you
could
guys
just
are
have
good with
consensus
John's
and-
suggestions, I
Yeah.
wrote them
Yeah,
down.
unless you
Okay.
want to have resiliency in that language somehow, but I don't.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know where it fits.
Yeah, it
that's-
doesn't-
I was just thinking that myself. I'm not sure, you know. I think sustainability is sort of the same thing in many ways, so.
It's like environment.
Yeah, it's like environment.
Yeah,
It can be interpreted pretty broadly.
all right. And then I guess, do we have any comments from the audience on this item? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to our next item. 4.3, review Environmental Advisory Board meeting frequency. This is something that's come up as well, and I guess this is born from the discussion in December as well.
This was prior to, like, this was the November discussion that the council had, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, November, yeah.
all boards are discussing their frequency.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this in the past as well, and have come always back to meeting quarterly at 4 PM. Here we are. So that's what I'll say about that. I don't know what anyone else has, but.
You know, I have been kind of saving this comment because I'm a little bit bothered by Mrs. Lynch's inability to attend this meeting and there being no accommodations for that. And, you know, when we had that meeting, I think it was in October, and we were doing it remotely, I have to say, I rather enjoyed that. Granted, I had a little trouble with the video, but I was able to stay at work for the longest period of time and get some more things done. And I was able to take better notes because I was in my own personal space. And it shocks me that we couldn't come up with accommodations, whether it was legally or whatever, in the months leading up to this for somebody in her position. And, you know, I'm not saying we should change the times or the amount of meetings, but we certainly should accommodate somebody. I kind of look at it as the American Disabilities Act. I mean, not being able to attend this is, in many ways, is a disability, you know? we have people at my work that can't come into work right now because of their health circumstances. And, maybe that's one of the things that we need to start thinking about as far as these meetings go, is a way to attend them remotely indefinitely.
No, I like
know.
that, yeah, I wonder if there's a way to
I
look into that.
support that as
Yeah.
well, but I would go, make a recommendation to the city council that for the time being, with situations like Ms. Lynch's, that they waive the requirement of missing 2 meetings, that you're basically off the board.
Right.
And
Especially a
so-
new member like that,
Right. So,
I mean, these are unusual times, I mean, these are, we don't get pandemics that often, hopefully.
No, we
Knock
don't,
on
no,
wood,
thankfully,
wherever it
yeah.
is.
and I agree with your point that it's very similar to a disability. And
Yeah.
although we have to abide, I guess, by our governor's directive, that the meetings need to be, held in public,
But that there may
But-
be, certainly be an exception
Exception,
made, like
but-
if you can't make it to the next meeting, then I would think the rules would mean she's off the board.
Well, and I agree that, well, I think if she's given a heads up, I think we
Yeah, I
have
think it's
extenuating.
without notice.
Without
Yeah, it's without
notice,
excused absence.
yeah.
Oh, is it?
The
Oh.
rule actually reads one excused or not excused,
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
but no one enforces it.
excellent.
that's true. Yeah, but I agree.
that does not mean you guys need to just start missing, and
No, no.
not what that means.
But I agree that the technology is there, and we were able to meet remotely. And so maybe there is a way moving forward that we can provide that option. Like we have more recently when we've had our meetings or other meetings that are on live stream on social media, and people can leave comments and stuff there and view them. Now they're not actually attending, so like you said, they're still at a disadvantage. But we've seen now over the last year that there are ways to incorporate people into the meeting.
It does take
So
more staff.
yeah,
It takes more staff to do it. We have to have an IT person.
sure.
So there's that cost.
Well, I'm the new kid on the block, but I would be in favor of having bi-monthly meetings. I would be in favor of us having a meeting every 2 months, 6 times a year.
Okay.
Just because, I think there's a lot that happens in 3 months.
Agreed.
And there are a lot of issues that come up, they come and they go, and we don't have input in them. Of course, the pandemic was, killed our schedule this year, and, we had final input on the landings at the last minute. But those things happen, they can come up and go very quickly.
No, I agree, and I also wonder if, moving forward, if there's a discussion by leaders about realigning how that would look in terms of what our agendas would be quarterly, if we're in a different department where we are getting stacks of
Yeah,
things.
well, I think we
So
have
how would
fuller
that?
agendas.
Right,
And
right.
would really probably, it would necessitate meeting more frequently. I mean, I realize that's, not how it has been done, and when people come on the board, that may not have been their expectation, so.
But I think, like you said, 2 more meetings would be reasonable. I'm not saying we would do that or they would tell us to do that, but I think if we were, like I said, realigned and we had more all the time, it would necessitate meeting, and I think that would be a good balance between what we've traditionally done and moving forward, and to see if that would meet that increase in, I guess, materials that we have
Input
to
from
go through,
council
so.
or directives from council, I mean, and sustainability is
Right.
becoming.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a part of everything the city does. I mean,
Mhm.
it's,
I
so
would-
anyway, that would be my.
Well,
opinion.
I think it has a lot to do with what the city is going to be directing us with the council.
And that's true too.
Sarah's
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And there's always the opportunity to schedule workshops and things like that. We've talked about that in the
Yeah.
past. And I would remind you guys that I take time off of work
Yeah.
vacation time off of work to attend these meetings. So more meetings is less vacation for me in real time. Not that I'm complaining, but I would only like to do it if it's necessary. I
Yeah,
wouldn't like
yeah.
just, let's have more meetings, you know?
Right,
I want to
right.
see a directive that requires my attention.
Sure, sure.
You know, otherwise, you know, most of my volunteer time is on the weekends, not so much during the week, you know?
I would
So-
suggest that two of the meetings, if we have additional meetings, they not be here. Because a lot of what we deal with is out there in the environment.
Yeah.
And that we try to, look at projects in the field. We get a better understanding of really what's happening. And, places, I know like the trip we had out to
was gonna say there was-
Cooper's Point.
Yeah.
That was fabulous.
Yeah, a lot of
It's still
value in that,
reminiscent.
yeah.
And, there are other projects that I think we can get a better sense of, not sitting here,
Yep.
but out.
Right.
And
Yeah.
maybe, if we kind of looked at the length of days and everything, it might be, spring and fall, not having to do a site visit, in a 95-degree day in the middle of the summer when,
Yeah.
you get in those thunderstorms in the afternoon. But spring and fall, that we try to schedule a spring field trip, a fall field trip, and that be the other meetings.
Everybody
Right,
loves
I-
field
I-
trips.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Whether it's a
Even make them
Saturday or late
Saturday.
in the evening after work,
Yeah.
you got enough sunlight to do that.
I'm 100% on board for something like
Yeah, me
that.
too.
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know
I
if,
agree.
Absolutely.
That's something we need to plan ahead and make a motion for, but.
Yeah, I think this is
consider when things
similar
come
to
up.
before, we don't have to make any motion, you
Okay,
just give your
yeah,
feedback
so
to the council.
you're saying keeping your 4 meetings and then adding like 2 field trips a year is what you're
Yeah.
suggesting,
Yeah.
a spring and fall field trip?
Yeah.
Okay,
When necessary.
Yeah, that obviously have environmental and sustainability importance.
Margaritas?
It may be,
After,
let's say there was a project, there was a big neighborhood issue
Yeah.
related to it. So, we hold the site meeting, and maybe the neighbors are there, the neighborhood group is there. that
Yeah,
Has a
yeah.
concern,
Participation
and,
that way.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep. I
Try
agree.
to engage the communities where programs are happening.
I agree, I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Any other discussion from the board on
That
this?
was perfect.
Any discussion from, please come forward, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, Brian Beckman, Clearwater. And I just wanted to offer, again, perspective, if you haven't looked at this already. So Dunedin has a comparable advisory board. It's called Environmental Quality. They meet 6 times a year. They also have a bit more of a feedback loop in terms of that advisory board bringing recommendations to the council, having it discussed as an agenda item, and back and forth. It's something, if you haven't looked at it before, I'd recommend that you do take a look at that. They have, in some cases, been proactive at bringing things forward. I'll give you examples like some of their net zero type of things that they've incorporated into their policies. And there's been other examples that I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's been, it is a bit more of a feedback loop of actually looking for that advisory board to bring recommendations, bring feedback, take information from the commission and take that under advisement and then come back with some additional feedback. But in order to get that accomplished, they do meet 6 times a year. So having that meeting frequency helps accomplish those goals. So I just wanted to give that to you as food for thought.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yes, I will say I am familiar with the Dunedin Committee, and I know that they have made decisions on such small things as the grass at Pioneer Park. So they because the city there wanted to change it to a fake turf, and their environmental group said no, and they have regular grass there still. So
Understood.
yeah, so thank you very much for those comments. We'll move on to our next item. Discuss scheduling the EAB annual report to City Council. So I guess we just did this. We want to keep it fresh in our mind when we want to go back there.
yeah, it has been requested that we have an official discussion as
Alright.
to when we want to do it. So for as long as I can remember, it's been December.
Yep.
And then it just sort of depends on what meeting preference in December that you guys have and what works with the agendas and things like that. But
Yeah,
it's been December, so whatever you guys.
Yeah, I agree. It's always been December or late February, whatever it is, or early, yeah. I looked and saw December 16th. I don't know if there's another date that you guys would prefer, or if that's,
One moment.
but, that was one that I think they're on. All right.
I don't have a preference. I mean, we could talk about the end of the year there and where we're going a little bit.
Yeah.
What we've done. Seems like
Oh, that's- stop talking. No, it's.
You said what date?
The 16th, there's the 2nd as well.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
Sarah, was that, wasn't part of the discussion, but was that if we want to do it in December, or was it that the council didn't want every board coming at the same time? So maybe someone could do it in April, I don't know.
Yeah, it was just like the preference of which board wanted to do it when. Because some boards, I don't think do presentations, like, I think they're supposed to, but some of them,
Yeah, most advisory boards
okay.
do, but they're all like December, so.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, was that the
I
question?
did not hear that they had to change it to another month.
Oh, I don't think they have to, but
If you prefer to do it another month, a different month?
Would November, up to the council's discretion perhaps to do it in November after we've had our
I was
discussion.
gonna say, so your
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, we could
Your
do that
meeting's
too.
in October, so to
Right.
do a November one.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Like
there's
that
only
enough
one
time to
council
prep
meeting in
up.
November sometimes,
It
but,
looks like there's the 4th and the 18th in November. So there's two.
I mean, it's really on you a little bit there, Jared, because you're
Okay.
oftentimes the one that presents the documents.
so it'll just depend on, like, if you guys just choose November, then the clerk will say if she has a preference of which one, or I can ask you guys at the time. So we'll just say November is your preferred month.
Yeah, I'm
And then
fine
it'll
with
be
that.
right
I
after
think,
your
yeah,
meeting.
especially if there's a issue of backlog for everybody
Okay.
presenting toward the end of the year there. We've already completed our last meeting in October, so that's fine.
All right,
I'm not 100% sure of it, but it just made sense.
okay,
With so many boards all presenting at the same time.
yeah.
All right.
And of course, we can go before council at other times of the year too.
Oh, yeah, we can always. Any other discussion on this item from the board? Any from the audience? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4.5, election of officers. So we have to do this by our bylaws every year. So I'll just open up that to the board.
We have nominations for chair.
Can they self-nominate?
I don't think you can.
Well, I like it the way it is, so if I was to nominate anything, I like it the way it is.
I don't know, I mean, I think we should ask Jared though, like, Jared, I mean, if you're tired of doing it, if you want to rotate it.
No, if you guys still like me at the helm,
You know,
I have no problem.
My big move was
Wrapping
getting
the
John
gavel.
in my spot. I loved it.
All right. Yeah, I'm fine with that if everyone else is. If-
Second,
I'll second.
okay. Is
Okay.
it for both positions?
Yes, that's my feeling is I love the way this is. So motion to keep it the same. How
Maintain
about that?
continuity. All right.
Okay.
It's working great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And then do we have any, I guess, discussion from the audience on this item? No? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our old business. So, Sarah, I guess, do we have some old business?
Yes, Sheridan is here, as we've discussed many times, our sustainability coordinator, and she's gonna give us a little update on a few things.
Thank you, Sarah. So I asked Sarah to join this meeting way after she had to send in the agenda, so thank you for sneaking me in.
Thank you
Old
for joining
business.
us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So today I wanted to give you an update on the green print update process. So my first year of being sustainability coordinator, I knew that we needed to update a 9-year-old document. And so I started the process of meeting with each department, not only getting a feel for what they do and what they hope to do in the future, but also some information on what strategies they have either discussed, not discussed, or taken action on in the last 9 years. So all of that went into a database to inform the next update. Then also understanding we needed to do some deeper work, mostly a feasibility analysis, to understand with any updated strategies or new strategies, that includes generally cost, staff time, and hopefully a return on investment, all which is out of my wheelhouse to calculate. So with that knowledge, we decided to work with a firm to finalize the update for Greenprint. The firm is WGI, and they will be presenting a final draft to us mid-March. So I wanted to make sure that I could give you guys a sneak peek of what the update is likely to include. So the main essence of the document is going to be very much the same. It's going to have the overall umbrella goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's going to have the same 8 topic areas to achieve those emission reductions. But some new things that you'll see, I'll go over. One thing that we did with WGI is we crosswalked the current Greenprint plan with the Florida Green Building Coalition's Green Community Criteria, which is a very lengthy suggestion of things that cities can do and take on. So we saw what Greenprint strategies were in alignment with what FGBC recommends and what the plan currently did not have that we might want to incorporate. And basically that led us to either adopt new strategies or add components to already existing strategies. Another thing that we've done is looked at some of the plans of our neighboring communities that we really appreciate, specifically St. Pete's ISAP plan, Orlando's Greenworks plan, Largo's LEAP plan, and so on, to make sure that we're also we're facing the same challenges, so we want to make sure that we're approaching them in similar helpful ways, but also that we're kind of on par with some of the commitments that our neighboring communities are taking on. So let's see here. One other thing that we wanted to make sure to do that was feedback from the last Greenprint plan was that we really wanted to make sure that we added components to each strategy that were more specific and more measurable. So you can expect to see like more definite timelines and then more tasks underneath each strategy that will help to complete that strategy. So some of the overall goals that we have, yes, greenhouse gas reductions, but we're also including 2 additional elements that are maybe not at the lead, but they're undertones of the document that the previous plan did not have, and that is resilience and equity. So we want to make sure not only that sustainability is a primary concern for the city, but also that resilience is. And so with sustainability and how we define it being primarily mitigation and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, resilience for us is more adaptation and really understanding the challenges that we face and are likely to face in the near future and making sure that our networks, communities, and infrastructure can adapt to those challenges. We're also going to include new strategy indicators for each of the strategies. And that's mainly because we really want to show that it's not just greenhouse gas reduction that's a benefit. There are multiple co-benefits of sustainability and of these individual strategies that the city will experience. And so these co-benefit indicators include financial savings, public health, equity, job creation, environmental quality, and resilience. So if a strategy is proposed in Greenprint or is dictated in Greenprint, we know that it's going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but maybe it also creates jobs, or maybe it also improves environmental health, or maybe it improves air quality, so we would show a symbol there that means that increased public health could result. Let's see. 2 other things that I really wanted this document to be was accessible and inviting. So I think some city staff, including myself, sometimes have a hard time reading our documents. So that doesn't necessarily make it accessible or inviting to the public to do the same. So we wanted to make sure that we were including a glossary, and it's called a green glossary. It's at the beginning of the document, so that if there's any term that is really like industry specific or municipal, that the public probably isn't well acquainted with, that we're really spelling it out. We also, I went through the document and to the best of my abilities, tried to decrease the required reading level, meaning you don't necessarily, hopefully, need a college degree to get through the document and understand it and comprehend it. Now, that's a little bit of a balance because we're talking about really complex issues like greenhouse gas reductions and resilience, but also trying to make sure that we're not watering down our goals either on that way. And the second thing, to make it more inviting, that we will hopefully be launching soon is a call for photo submissions. So what I really want to do is basically ask the public to send in pictures that are taken in Clearwater, are sustainability or resilience specific, and they can submit it for one of the 8 topic areas that they think it best embodies. And we will, with their photo submission, credit them in the document. Because the intent there is not only to have a document that reflects the city, but also people want to see the faces and places that they love. So hopefully more eyes will get to the document if we do that. Second to last is that there is one additional proposal that we're including that council will need to approve. Council will need to approve the entire document, but this specifically, and that we are proposing a future greenhouse gas reduction goal that falls in line with the Paris Agreement. So that 80% reduction by 2050. And then finally, which I mentioned earlier, WGI is going to be doing a feasibility analysis. Actually, they're currently finishing it. And basically that looks at what the cost, what the return on investment, and what the staff time we might be looking at for the new update going forward with the new strategies. Before I open it for questions, I wanted to touch base on 2 things. Our compost program, which I'm hoping you all are familiar with. I can't remember if I brought it up in our last meeting. Basically, we had an online course where it was open to the public. You could watch it, learn how to compost. We partnered with Pinellas Community Compost to do it. And then if you're a Clearwater resident and you completed the online course, you could pick up a compost bin. So to date, 942 people have enrolled in the course. Now, hopefully that means they all watched it and completed it, but for sure, at least over 400 did, because we've given out 400 bins to Clearwater residents specifically on 5 different dates, and I think Jared was one of them. So that's one, and I know that we also heard about solar earlier, which thank you very much, Brian, for taking the time to pull all of those permits, and it's a valuable source of data to know the amount of solar that's happening across the city on residential properties. As for the city, we are currently looking at, and looking, I mean, very much pursuing, either we're talking it in the design specs or we're talking with a company or a firm that has done a site visit and is engineering plans. Fire stations 46 and 47. 46 is on the beach, 47 is right there near, it's going to be built near Clearwater High. So solar is going to be incorporated hopefully on both of those buildings. Both the design firms are incorporating that into their plans. We are also in talks with a company to look at the transfer station and putting solar on the roof of that newly built facility. We are looking at incorporating solar at our recycling center when the roof is updated on that building. We have talked with Duke about it. That's very early on in the conversation. And then another one that is very early on in the conversation, but we have been talking with a firm about and are pursuing a feasibility analysis is the air park.
What?
The air park.
The air park?
And granted, none of those are 100% guaranteed at this point, but we're strongly looking at them. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't want to step
By
on
the
your
airport, did you mean like the landings area?
So, and the area of the landing, so you have the landings, and then kind of like a catty corner to it is the Clearwater Air Park.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to step on your toes, Mark, but any solar on at parking lots on the beach? I think that's
Not,
something you,
not yet. So I know. Let me get one good one under our belt, because there are two things that get brought up with solar on the beach: the effect of salt and any potential storm. Like, that is a main concern. So at least Fire Station 46 is practically right on the beach, right? So it's right there near Palm Pavilion. We have talked with Duke about that. Duke, it's way too early in the conversation to say this for sure, but they're checking into it. They may be interested, may is the key word, in a partnership, because the type of solar panel that we are proposing on that roof is a peel and stick, and Duke doesn't know how it will interact with the salt water. So they may be interested in partnering so that they can see how they hold up and if they should invest in them in the future, which would be, in my opinion, a really great opportunity. That's very early in the conversation, though. Yeah.
okay. Any other
Yeah,
comments?
I've got a couple.
Well, on that, are there any other coastal communities that have tried to park solar on, a beachfront, or that we could investigate for seeing if they're having issues with the type of
Yeah.
product that they've spec'd?
I can look into that more. When we had the conversation with Duke about the peel and stick model, the consensus was that they hadn't seen it yet. But when it comes to more of the, and I'm not going to be eloquent in how I describe it, but the array that you're talking about for covered parking,
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are examples. I mean, the St. Pete Pier may be one of those examples. Granted, their position isn't the same to
Not as
ours. Yeah.
severe as
Yes.
the cold fronts that we get coming through.
Okay.
Is there any, the last council, in the December council meeting where we spoke, gave our annual report, the council agreed to a minimum of silver lead qualifications, that level, in the 3 properties on the bluff for the RFPs that were going out on those. And I was just wondering, are we looking at all into, maybe that kind of standard for all new construction that and what would be the chances of that? Because that's, something that I've been thinking about. I don't know why we wouldn't, for the purposes of for saving money at new construction, it would seem like it would make sense.
Yeah, I think that council meeting did reinvigorate that conversation. I can't say anything final yet based on that, but we have been, even before that meeting, looking at LEED requirements, or at least incorporating them into our new building design. Now, if they officially pursue the certification, it comes back to the conversation that Kat had, where it's that cost of certification that becomes the discussion that we're really having right now. Is, do you build to the LEED standard and not get the recognition for it?
Yeah.
Or do you, but not have the cost? Or do you build to the standard, get the recognition, but then also have the price of the actual certification? Certainly Greenprint does call for buildings to be, or all new facilities to be built to a nationally recognized standard, like LEED or FGBC. But still, that conversation and that direction needs to come down.
Would that be, I would see that as an agenda item for us to look at. I don't know, to look at leads. It seems like it's a trend that's going on, and it would seem important to me, especially in new construction, that we have energy efficiencies built into that. And I don't know, not necessarily I know, so many designs don't require actual LEED qualification, because I know that's an expensive process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just more interested in the outcome, that it just,
That they're building to
that
standard.
we yeah.
I would say, and I'm not an engineer, but I would say, like, our engineering team very much looks at that as a standard and pursues it where feasible for them. We don't necessarily have the monitoring system of LEED, though, to be like, yes, check, check,
Right.
check. So.
Right. What is 4.0 with I need to get more familiar with the with LEED qualifications. The 4.0 that's being followed for the Imagine Clearwater project, is that That's a lead, level, right?
No, it's like an addition. So every few years, I'm not sure the amount of time, LEED will update like their certification requirements, just to keep in time with the technology, the knowledge, and so on. So 4.0 is an addition, like this is the new LEED standard that we are asking you, and then of those is levels where you can do like gold, silver, platinum. And so
Oh,
on.
okay.
So is that something you're going to consider removing or changing in
Nope.
green print?
Yeah, it will remain, for sure. Yeah, I think the topic there is that it was in the green print from 11 years ago. Conversation has been stirred up more about it recently.
Yeah.
I don't have a final directive right now, but we may be getting there.
Okay.
Any other comments? or
I'm
questions?
just kind of curious what the definition of equity is here in your new items of, that we're adding to the green.
Yes, I can pull up the document and we do have it spelled out, but just making sure that all members of our community and population have access to the same benefits and quality of life around Clearwater. So for instance, affordable housing is a huge part of that, but then also in the update in the proposed document of green print, under the livability section is going to be environmental justice, to make sure that our most vulnerable communities and populations are involved at every aspect of the planning process, and to make sure that we are vigilant in making sure that they don't experience any difference in air quality, heat, water, so on.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for your time, Sheridan.
Thank you.
I have one
Oh,
more.
oh, sorry.
What about this, the co-op, the Solar
Oh, yes.
United?
Thank you. So I have been for a year just waiting, because we initially were really excited to join the co-op. I got full support from our senior executive team and from the city manager. But at that time, Sun, which is an amazing organization, was reevaluating how they were going to offer the co-op. So now that they are back on board and want to partner with cities, I've already preliminarily expressed our interest and signed us up as interested in working with them. So what, to my understanding and my discussion with Sun, is it would look like the city supporting the co-op and publicizing it, and making sure that its residents are aware that the co-op exists, that we have it presented on either like a website, social media posts, at any events that hopefully happen in the future, that we either have like a table about the co-ops, and that Sun has brought them to Clearwater, and that we're a partner with them. And I think the other ask for partnership is like community space and helping to organize any potential meetings of residents who are interested in forming their own co-op. So, yeah.
So how does the St. Pete co-op work with, I mean, are we going to is the city going to advertise that, or are we going to wait till they're like more partnering with us?
So they're going to partner with us. We're going to, when they are ready, we will advertise either
okay.
our own like co-op
Oh.
options, or I'm waiting to see if they want it to be like each individual municipality, or if they want like a Clearwater Largo co-op and a Dunedin Oldsmar, or maybe a North Pinellas co-op, and I'm waiting to see how it's going to be organized. But we would help, at least within city boundaries, our own residents make sure that they're aware of it, make sure that they have spaces to come and learn, and that we're working with Sun to create those opportunities.
I'm just really excited because I got my house, my rooftop solar as a part of the Sun co-op. That was the only one that's been done in North Pinellas. So, and it was great for me. I had their support. If I had any problems with the contractor and, they've been fabulous.
Yeah, I've only heard positive things, I think, from both St. Pete and Tarpon Springs. Also got the benefit from that when it happened.
Great price. Good backup.
All right, thank you very much,
Thank
Sheridan.
you.
All right, we'll move on to our next item, Director's Report.
I feel like I kind of jumped the gun earlier. Like, I was just gonna say, based on what I know, the council will be setting your agenda from now on. So that's kind of all I was gonna share with you guys. So, I will provide these notes, and they will get passed on to them, about changes you want made and things you want kept the same. And so then we'll have some direction prior to the next meeting.
This still allows us, if we have interests that we want to have pursued.
I don't know if it does or not. That might be
Okay.
something that you have to notify like a council member and say, this is something I would be interested in, and then they say, okay, add this to an agenda. I'm not sure
Okay.
exactly how that works, but we will know before April.
All right. Very well then. Thank you very much. Item number 7, board members to be heard. I'll start to my right. Ms. Wentworth?
I don't really know how this goes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm new. I'm very glad to be here.
All right. Well, yes, thank you for
My
joining us.
First meeting.
Yes.
It's a thrill to be here, and, so, yeah, that's all I think I've got.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, it's different on this side of the dais, right?
Yeah, it is different.
All right. Very well. Member Wright?
I don't have anything for this one. I kind of said my piece with the meeting issue.
Okay. Very well. Member Thomas?
I have one, or actually two items. One pertains to the a report to the city council. And it was my understanding that there was a resolution that the board provided to the city council. That was never provided to the board members. I've never seen it.
I didn't even know about it.
And the other thing that I found troubling was that it was not prepared in accordance with the vote of the board. It included a 60% review rather than the 30% that we had voted on. It was just, I was surprised and had to correct things on the city council floor, but if I had been provided the resolution in advance, might have been able to reduce the
Yeah.
appearance of not being informed.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
So I think we have a little bit of improvement that we can make in terms of communication.
Yeah.
Distribution of materials to the board. I think if we could get a copy of that resolution now and understand what its status is, I didn't, could have brought this up, I guess, under old business.
Yeah.
But bring it up here. If that can be forwarded, and have we received any feedback from the city council?
Not as far as the resolution.
Nope.
No. Just.
I think a lot of, like, they were waiting for this discussion too.
Yeah, because I didn't think they made any they didn't take any action on it or anything at the time, so.
No.
All the boards are having this discussion,
Yeah.
so I think they're waiting to make a lot of other decisions about the boards after they've met and talked about their powers and duties and things.
And the other, one of my things that I try to do is promote the removal of invasive species in our environment.
Good mention today.
And
I forgot.
I've actually, it was a month or so ago, I actually went out in the North Clearwater beach area, and every one of those little pedestrian walkways that you can get out to the beach, from the beach club at the end of North Beach all the way down. I went and looked to see what I could find for invasives. And I was really surprised that there wasn't much. There were a couple here and there, but nothing of true significance. And on my own Sand Key where I live, they tend to disappear. But there is one property, and I've shared this with Sarah, still have, I'm waiting, what might we be able to do? It relates to the community sailing facility, and there is some huge Brazilian pepper, carrot wood on the Marriott property that overhang onto the community sailing facility.
I actually had a citizen mention that to me, that wanted me to bring it up today, and I had forgotten.
I'm
Here we
bringing it
are.
up because
Thank you, John.
I've brought it up, met with the folks at the sailing center, sent Sarah some pictures and all. But the more important thing is, there's a stand of mangrove between the sailing center and the beach area that the city of Clearwater has. We have a parking area there. People have to pay to park on this now. There's Brazilian pepper starting to infest that stand of mangroves. Actually, one good size went right on the shorefront. I was amazed that how much tidal action it might get. How do we go about removing those? I had worked with the city before I was on this board on Sand Key, down at Bay Park on Sand Key, and the city did a fabulous removal of a lot of Brazilian pepper, Australian pine, as well as carrot wood, and then came back with a replanting plan that was fabulous, and it's really thrived. The mangroves have encroached a little bit further, towards the upland area, and it was a wonderful project. The city got a lot of good press on it as well, but we should be trying to keep the Brazilian peppers out of the mangroves.
And another area is along the railroad tracks where some of the bike trails go is incredibly infested with the Brazilian peppers, and that's what they also mentioned to me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
So
What's the process for removal if it's on city property?
So city property, it depends on the area, like a Parks and Rec does a lot of it. Sometimes Stormwater does it, like it just depends on where specifically it is. In the case of the sailing center, because it's on Marriott property, code enforcement is trying to work with the property owner to get them to remove it. So they've sent a letter, and then they have like a certain amount of time to respond, and so we're kind of in that pending period where they still haven't done anything, still haven't responded, so we'll see what the next step is as far as the Marriott and that situation. I don't know about the bike trails. Like, I don't know exactly where it is, whether it's like the Pinellas Trail, so it's adjacent, like it's county, but the CSX is, like, we have no rights around.
I'm specifically thinking about, in my experience, the Ream-Wilson Trail has a large amount of Brazilian peppers along, especially starting from behind Bright House Field and running towards Safety Harbor. And that area is just overrun with Brazilian peppers.
Along the railroad tracks, they have a pretty wide
Their
easement,
yeah.
CSX does, and we can't do anything in the CSX area.
Park and,
So like in the parks, like they do a pretty good job of keeping things under control, but if it's near the railroad tracks at all, like we can't touch it.
What does CXS stand for?
I have no idea, but it's
It's the
the railroad tracks, like it's the railroad company that seems to own everything.
Now, if someone noticed Brazilian peppers or other invasives on city property, could they notify the city through, Clearwater Connect or
Yep.
something? Okay.
Yep, through that notification, and most of the time, it's the Parks Department who handles that most of the time.
I just have one question about the landings. I understand that is the landings, is Parks and Rec now about to talk about the landings?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
It is on Parks and Rec's, their board agenda, at their next agenda, at their
Is it
next
on the
meeting, which is
26th?
next week sometime,
week, yeah.
yeah. So they're talking about future plans of the landings, so they'll be talking about that.
I mean, would you see us having any input into that, or I know we
So I was gonna ask for my comments about the landings, and I think something else you brought up about the reclaimed water use out there. So I don't know if that's something that we can find out about as far as for how our, or
Yeah,
now that
reclaimed
it's taken
water
out
use
of.
is moving forward, like they will be submitting their plan as to how to connect in the spring, and they will currently be moving forward with that. As far as the future of the landings go, that is right now in Parks and Rec's board hands, like that won't come to you unless it's something different, like it's, like that's under their jurisdiction, so they're the ones who are going to be discussing the future of the landings.
I know in our letter to council, we had
Yeah.
offered an idea to keep it as an open
Open recreation.
space or whatever, so I don't know if
As
we need
residents, you
to-
may want to attend that meeting
Okay.
and provide input.
Yeah. Or can we do something as a board, send something similar as a
Yeah,
letter
if you
to let
want-
them
if-
know that we support that?
You could send something as a board if you want to draft something. Yeah, so that could be potentially discussed at your next meeting if you guys all want to watch that meeting and read the notes or whatever.
When's that meeting again?
I'm sorry?
Do you know when that meeting is?
It's next week. I can send you when it is.
Okay, it's probably on this agenda.
What time do they meet? Is it
In the
6
evening.
o'clock?
The report that we made to the city council did include our recommendation there.
You know, I mean, we were basically,
Yeah.
leaving an empty lot is what it sounded like to me at that time, you know? I mean, I don't think we came up with any specific plans other than.
No, just, yeah.
What did we say? Did we say open recreation, open?
I mean, people have approached me about doing a bike trail and a disc golf park and all that. Doesn't
Yeah, I
seem,
think just the general, just
seem
a very
feasible to me.
general.
Keep it green.
Yeah, but it was, I think, a more general zoning.
What time does it start?
6.
6 p.m.?
Members of the public, to interrupt,
Thank you.
please.
Yeah, so I guess we can submit a letter after they have their discussion next week on that. Okay, I had a couple other items for board members to be heard, if that's okay. Not to step on your toes,
No,
Mark,
no,
but
go ahead.
something that Mark has brought up in the past, and I don't know if we've had any real resolution on it, trash cans on the beach. So I wonder if there's a way, we've talked about the different infrastructure they've added out there now, solid
Yeah.
waste added, but what we've learned is that the trash cans that are actually on the beach are overseen by the Parks and Rec. So, and we've talked to Solid Waste Department in the past because that's who oversees the trash cans right off of the beach.
Yeah, they had
So
talked
maybe
about
there's,
some potbelly
yeah.
type.
Yeah, so maybe there's somewhere, I don't know where we are with that, but I wanted to bring that up because
Glad
it's
you did.
something
Thank you.
that Mark's talked about in the past, and I don't know that we've had any sort of, resolution in terms of, are we gonna get new cans? Can we get cans with lids? Why do we have these cans versus other cans? There are different, there are more modern cans in different facilities throughout the city, so maybe they can give us more answers as to where we are with that, if that's possible. And then we talked about the landings. I was just going to also mention that the city has its second annual sustainability conference this year, and it's held virtually. And so there will be online webinars Tuesdays throughout February, and the focus is on gardens, with experts leading sessions on how to grow vegetables on a patio.
And landscaping.
And landscaping.
Gardening, landscaping, and
Yep.
land preparation.
You can
soil
register
preparation.
online and watch from the comfort of your home virtually. And then next week is the e-waste disposal at the Hercules facility. So if anyone has any electronics or anything like that they want to get rid of, the city does that it's the last Wednesday of every month at Hercules. So anything you have, you can
Otherwise, you
take
gotta
it
drive
there.
all the way down to.
Hercules. Oh, yeah, otherwise, yeah.
What are the hours of that 9 to 12?
I think they do it from, is it 9 to 12 or, yes, throughout the morning.
Well, it's like 7.
7 in the morning till,
7 or 8.
yeah, 7 to 3 or
So I
something.
drop off on my way to work.
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
so,
Not that I get here that early.
I got an old TV I gotta get rid of.
yeah, I was also gonna mention that, in November, it was after our last meeting, the city launched the, Community Garden Grant Program to, support existing gardens and encourage new ones. And that's part of the city's Green Print program as well, to promote local food sourcing and urban gardening. And Sheridan mentioned it, but I also wanted to bring it up as well for our closing remarks, that the city also has its compost program. I got one of the compost bins. They're great. I've been using it. They've given out 400 of them already, so I think they got 500 to start, so there's still some available. I guess if the other 942 people out of the 400 who have gotten them haven't gotten them yet. But outside of that, I have no other comments, so I'll adjourn our meeting. Thank you all.